Hello again, everybody. It's your friend Will, the Memory Lapse, here with a little deck tech video. It's more of a deck tech update, but considering how bad the audio quality was on my early videos and we have more subscribers now, I figured I'd revisit this. So I've been trying to build new decks since I made Master Rank, find more fun stuff to play with in Quick Constructed, and we actually did 2 runs of this today on stream, 7 wins and 6 wins. And this is an updated version of my Bug Black Blue Green Explore deck. One of the very first decks I built and crafted towards when I started playing Arena. And I'm going to run through the cards and talk a bit about, well, before I run through the cards, the philosophy of this deck is the metagame breakdown, as much as I have talked about the 2 pillars of the format being essentially blue-white control with or without approach, and mono-red aggro and other variants of aggressive creature decks. It definitely skews much more heavily towards aggressive decks, to the point where I think if you're going to build a mid-range deck like this, you really need to be optimizing as well as you can to beat other creature decks, especially creature decks that are going to try to go under you. And that means sacrificing some advantages against control, and until we get best of 3, which is hopefully going to come in the June update, and we won't know about what's coming in June until they finally get their act together and make a nice post for us, supposedly coming on Wednesday of next week. But we will see. So this is like I said, new version of the deck. It's optimized more to beat aggro decks. So we've got 4 Moment of Craving, 4 Seeker Squire, 4 Merfolk Branchwalker, 4 Wildgrowth Walker, 2 Champion of Wits, 4 Jadelight Ranger. So this package here, between let's start with the 2 drops. So what I really like about this deck and why it performs so well, I think we beat in the 7-2 or 7-1 win quick constructed run that we did. I think we beat like red deck 5 or 6 times in that run. We lost to it once, I think, as well, but we had a very, very good record against it. And it's very important. We have 16 2-drops here. This deck wants to do things on turn 2, and the format wants you to do things on turn 2, whether you're on the play or the draw. It's very important to have like a Moment of Craving to kill like their 2 or 3 drop, or to be able to create blockers that can at least force them to decide on their turn if they're going to use like a Magma Spray or a Lightning Strike, and if they decide to do that, then they're not putting another creature on the board, and it's absorbing damage. So you're looking to effectively like trade 1 for 1 with them early on and slow them down. And then of course Wildgrowth Walker, like I said in earlier videos when I was playing this deck a lot, like if this thing triggers once or twice against red deck, they really cannot win. Like the margin on that deck, like you turn the corner really hard, and they tend to beat you just by like 2 or 3 damage and gaining back 3, 6, 9 or more life. Like they just can never ever beat that unless they have a really, really good like late game plan, which a lot of the decks don't. They've skewed away from playing the Phoenixes and the the dragons and stuff. So, and then Jadelight, of course, goes with Wildgrowth Walker, and it's also just a great value card. And so the other upside of playing effectively, 12 2-drops and then a bunch of 3-drops, is that we can curve out against control decks. So even though we're not building to be good against control, we can still get hands that will develop naturally against control that also line up really well, or well enough against the beatdown decks, to at least match them on the board until you can start taking over the game, gaining life, getting good, spot removal off of Ravanous Chupacabra and Vraska's Contempt that will allow you to gain control of the board completely, and then just winning the game off of something like a Liliana or a Scarab God or Vraska. There's a couple flex slots in this deck. It's actually really straightforward, really linear deck, and fairly cheap to put together if you disregard the mana base. And I do think you really need to have like probably a minimum of 8, but more like what we're running here, 9, or even preferably 10. Like you could argue I could cut the Arch to put in another like Drown Catacomb, or put in one of the cycling dual lands. But I kind of like Arch because we do tend to get flooded with all the Explore. There's a couple flex spots in this deck. You could shave 1 Brontodon if you wanted to. 3, I just like this card in general. Like 3/4 lines up well against decks that are trying to attack you. It's just got a big butt that can block, and the ability is very important against blue-white decks because all of their removal, or almost all of their removal, is enchantment-based. So you can get back a permanent, like, if they exile, your Jadelight Ranger with a seal away, you get that back, and you get to trigger the Explorers again. That's huge. Or you can rescue a Planeswalker that's stuck under a cast out or a Scarab God. So it just has a lot of utility, works well in both matchups. So I think 3 is probably the right number. The 1 Dark Bargain is definitely a flex card, and so is the 1 Mending of Dominaria. And if I had maybe a 3rd Vraska's Contempt, I would consider adding that back in, or adding that in general over one of those. You could also play 1... let's see. Where is it? You could also probably play 1 Eldest Reborn, because we have a lot of creatures, and getting back a Planeswalker, or making them sacrifice their Teferi and getting back their Teferi. But I have just really disliked this card. I mean, I think if you're going to play it, I think you should only play 1. It's just been very bad against red. Like, it's impossible to keep in a opening 7. Like, you just don't know what you're playing against, and this would really be more of a sideboard card, I think, if and when we get to sideboard. And Mending is in a similar vein. Like, I like this as kind of a Dark Bargain-ish card. It reminds me a lot of the Tidings, the green version of Tidings that we had. I forget what they called it, like Tranquility or something, that they printed in Time Spiral that was just like GG3, draw 3 cards. And this more or less does that. Between the lands it puts into play, and on the triggers, like, because you're exploring and you're putting stuff into your graveyard, creatures into your graveyard sometimes, because you have Champion of Wits, each trigger on chapters 1 and 2 is going to draw you a card effectively, and it can be very good to like bring back a Chupacabra. Like, I definitely won games today where I got to recur some Chupacabras, chump block with them, or recur a Thrashing Brontodon to free something up from under enchantment. And then just the land, like getting like 2, 3, sometimes more lands in play off of the chapter 3, and shuffling everything back in can actually be good. It's a little bit dissynergistic with Scarab God, but this deck is land hungry. Like, if you do have a Scarab God going, you want those lands in play. I do like Dark Bargain that it does put 1 card into the graveyard, which plays with that plan. It plays with Liliana. It's a little bit dissynergistic, so you could definitely cut this. I just really love the card, and I like playing 1 of it. So you could always add like another Liliana instead of this, and probably the advantage that Liliana gains you is comparable, if not better. Or you could add another Vraska, though Vraska I think is already like on the borderline of a cut flex card. You could add another Scarab God. And then let's look at the lands. So, shouldn't be too surprising. We're going to play 1 basic island just because you're going to have ways to get it between the land that's a lot of decks play that like destroys a non-basic, so you want to have the island to go fetch it so they can't take you off blue. And you're going to get your cards exiled off of Settle the Wreckage, and there's situations where you're going to want to get that 2nd blue so you can bring back a Champion of Wits or something. You could go up to a 3rd Champion of Wits also, so if you were going to cut a Dark Bargain or a Mending, you can consider going to Champion of Wits number 3. Because you explore so much in this deck, and sometimes end up with a lot of land in hand, like having the Champion of Wits to draw you some fresh cards and move those lands into the graveyard can be very useful. As far as the lands go, I like Arch. I don't think this deck can support Field of Ruin. That's the card that destroys stuff. I like Arch because it helps you when you get flooded. You could play an Evolving Wilds if you wanted to in that spot. You could try to play some utility lands, like... I personally am not playing them because I don't like... Or these Memorials. I think they're both would be good in the deck, but I don't like having lands that come into play tapped because it kind of defeats the purpose of matching the fast decks early. I would consider playing a Fetid Pools or 2. I could see cutting the Arch and 1 Drowned Catacomb and playing 2 Fetid Pools just so that when you explore into it, at least it's something that you can cycle later. And they count as Island Swamp, so if you have one in your opening hand, you know that all of your other duels are going to come into play untapped, which is always kind of like nice peace of mind. Yeah, but overall, like, the list is really good, and once we have sideboards, you could of course put like Duresses and Doomfalls and all sorts of hateful things into the sideboard. You can consider crafting that 4/3 snake that keeps your creatures from being countered. Though honestly, this deck plays pretty well against counters, because you're going to get like 1 or 2 things down the board early on, and then your opponent is going to have to decide eventually between starting to clear your creatures with 1-for-1 removal, or with Seal of the Wreckage, and it's going to create opportunities in your second main phase to like jam a bigger threat. So this is the list I've been playing and probably will keep playing a little bit this weekend. I'll probably try to record at least one video with it. You know what? Let's even, as much as I love the card, let's just go to Liliana number 2 here. Mending is a cool card, but it just doesn't feel like it does enough in this format right now. So yeah, this is the deck. You know, I wish it was a little more budget on the land side, but you know, I think on the core deck side, it's really not that bad to put this together. So hopefully you enjoyed seeing something a little bit different, or at least seeing a new take on a deck that you know, I was playing a lot about a month ago. So yeah, that's it for this deck tech. You know, post below with any questions, comments, suggestions for additions or sideboard cards for when that feature comes. And I think I'm going to roll this into a quick constructed that I will record. So look for that as well. Thanks.